right, we are live. Welcome for those of you who are going to be joining live, and for those of you who are watching after the recording. Thank you so much for being here. We are diving into another Neville lecture video. Actually, today is going to be a little bit different because we're actually going to be reading from Neville's book, The Power of Awareness. I've had a lot of requests to read this book. It is my favorite of Neville's works out of the 10 books that he wrote. This one, I would say Feeling is the Secret as well. But this one is definitely an incredible read. And what I love so much about this is it really is more beginner friendly. It's written in ways that's supposed to appeal more to the everyday person in layman's terms. So I'm excited to dive in. Obviously, this book is a bit lengthy, so it's going to be part one. There's, I think, 27 chapters in this book in total. The chapters are short. They're very short, but nonetheless, this is going to be part one, and we're going to dive into everything that there is to go over. I previously had read from Neville's book, Feeling is the Secret, which you can also find in my Neville lecture playlist. Definitely this one and Feeling is the Secret is where I recommend everybody to start if you are not familiar with Neville's works and his books. But I will be toggling between screen sharing and reading, and then switching off to kind of break down and highlight some of the important takeaways so that we have a better grasp and understanding of these principles and these teachings so we can best apply them into our life and our circumstances. I've also left the link to the book if you want to read along. That is down in the description box. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. One second. All right, there we go. Neville Goddard's Power of Awareness. He wrote this book in 1952, starting with chapter 1, I Am. All things, when they are admitted, are made manifest by the light, for everything that is made manifest is light. The light is consciousness. Consciousness is one, manifesting in legions of forms or levels of consciousness. There is no one that is not all that is, for consciousness, though expressed in an infinite series of levels, is not divisional. There is no real separation or gap in consciousness. I am cannot be divided. I may conceive myself to be a rich man, a poor man, a beggar man, or a thief, but the center of my being remains the same, regardless of the concept I hold of myself. At the center of manifestation, there is only one I am manifesting in legions of forms or concepts of itself, and I am that I am. I am is the self-definition of the absolute, the foundation on which everything rests. I am is the first cause substance. I am is a self-definition of God. Now, right off the bat, a couple things that I want to share here that are super important. In virtually every book that Neville wrote, I believe every book, he starts with explaining I am. He starts with explaining consciousness, because this is something that we have to have at least an understanding of if we want to really grasp these teachings. Because, as Neville said, it is the foundation on which everything else rests. There is your self-concept, or the individual you, the you that you identify with, that includes your memories, your beliefs, your assumptions, the expectations and stories that you have. But beneath all of that, and what resides in all of us, is I am. This is the absolute. This is God, consciousness. And it's expressed in an infinite series of levels. So there are infinite states of consciousness, but it's all the same source. It's all the same cause substance. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in the next chapter. But essentially, it is really important to grasp the difference between I am, which is the real you, which is actually you, and your self-concept, which is effectively your ego, or the you that you identify with. So, and I did make a video talking in more detail about I am and the power of this understanding. I will make sure to link that in the description box below after I jump off this live. Definitely recommend checking that one out too, but important that we really grasp that you are not your beliefs, you are not your assumptions, you are not your thoughts, and this is what we mean by that. When we say you are not your thoughts, you are not your reactions or your beliefs, it's because you're not any of the things that you've identified with. You're not actually your self-concept. Well, let's continue, go into it a little bit further. I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. The awareness of being remains, regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who, where, and what I am. This is really important to understand. This helps to give a clearer picture. We might forget who we are, where we are, what we are, but you will always have that sense of awareness. If you came down with complete amnesia, if you woke up tomorrow and you completely forgot your memories, your every concept of yourself, if it was just a blank slate, you would still be this awareness. You would still be aware. You wouldn't cease to exist if you came down with amnesia. So that goes without saying that you are not any of the beliefs and assumptions or the things that you have identified with and attached to. It is I am. It is that awareness, your awareness right now that you are watching this video, that you are sitting in the room that you are sitting in. The awareness that is aware of your thoughts, that is aware of your circumstances. That is the real you, and that is God. I am is that which, amid unnumbered forms, is ever the same. This great discovery of cause reveals that, good or bad, man is actually the arbiter of his own fate, and that it is his concept of himself that determines the world in which he lives. And his concept of self is his reactions to life. In other words, if you are experiencing ill health, knowing the truth about cause, you cannot attribute the illness to anything other than the particular arrangement of the basic cause substance, an arrangement which was produced by your reactions to life and is defined by your concept of I am unwell. This is why you are told, let the weak man say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. For by his assumption, the cause substance I am is rearranged, and must therefore manifest that which its rearrangement affirms. This principle governs every aspect of your life, be it social, financial, intellectual, or spiritual. I am is that reality to which, whatever happens, we must turn for an explanation of the phenomena of life. It is I am's concept of itself that determines the form and scenery of its existence. Everything depends upon its attitude towards itself. That which it will not affirm as true of itself cannot awaken in its world. Let me repeat that. I am is the reality to which, whatever happens, we must turn for an explanation of the phenomena of life. It is I am's concept of itself that determines the form and scenery of its existence. Everything depends upon its attitude towards itself. That which it will not affirm as true of itself cannot awaken in its world. That is, your concept of yourself, such as I am strong, I am secure, I am loved, determines the world in which you live. In other words, when you say, I am a man, I am a father, I am an American, you are not defining different I ams. You are defining different concepts or arrangements of the one cause substance, the one I am. Even in the phenomena of nature, if the tree were articulate, it would say, I am a tree, an apple tree, a fruitful tree. When you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, conceiving itself to be something good, bad, or indifferent, and becoming that which it's conceived itself to be, you are free from the tyranny of second causes, free from the belief that there are causes outside of your own mind that can affect your life. In the state of consciousness of the individual is found the explanation of the phenomena of life. If man's concept of himself were different, everything in his world would be different. His concept of himself being what it is, everything in his world must be as it is. Thus, it is abundantly clear that there is only one I am, and you are that I am. And while I am is infinite, you, by your concept of yourself, are displaying only a limited aspect of the infinite I am. Now let's break this down. I know that was a lot, but it goes without saying how important this is, because it talks about what Neville's saying here. Number one, you are thus I am, your awareness of being, and that there is only one I am. There is not different or multiple gods. And this first cause is the cause of everything in your experience. So this reveals that we have the ultimate ability to change ourselves. This is why we can change ourselves, because we are not at the mercy of our conditions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our assumptions, that these are only different aspects of I am, different limitations, if you will. When changed, everything that you experience will change. That's why we say that nothing is impossible. That's why we say that you can manifest literally anything regardless of circumstance. And this is also important because we have to be able to turn to this to explain why things are happening the way that they are happening in our life. Because everything depends upon our attitude of ourself, what we believe and assume of ourself to be true, period. It is not, for example, if you are sick, if you are feeling unwell, it is not a second cause or something outside of you that brought this about. It was the belief that I am unwell. And what he said here at the last part is really important. If man's concept of himself were different, everything in his world would be different. That's why the only thing to change is self. The only thing to change is our beliefs and assumptions. Because with different beliefs and assumptions, with a different self-concept, your world would be completely different, and you wouldn't have to do anything to change it. So there's only one I am. You are that I am. And while I am is infinite, the you that is the individual, by your concept of yourself, is only displaying a limited aspect of that I am. So you can think of it as infinite roles that I am is playing. But it's all the same source. It's all the same cause, all the same substance. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and link to the video that I made about the power of I am to really delve into this concept more. But for now, let's go ahead and keep going. Chapter 2. Just kind of expanding a little bit more on what we just talked about. Chapter 2 is consciousness. It is only by a change of consciousness, by actually changing your concept of yourself, that you can build more stately mansions. Basically, how you can manifest. The manifestations of higher and higher concepts. By manifesting is meant experiencing the result of these concepts in your world. It is of vital importance to understand clearly just what consciousness is. The reason lies in the fact that consciousness is the one and only reality. It is the first and only cause substance of the phenomena of life. Nothing has existence for man save through the consciousness he has of it. Let me repeat that. Nothing has existence for man save through the consciousness he has of it. So in your reality, nothing exists except through what you are conscious of, what you are aware of, at least as far as your perspective is concerned. Now, in reality, in truth, all things exist, but in your experience, nothing is in existence for us as man, except through the consciousness we have of it. So if you want something removed from your life, you take your awareness and attention away from it, and vice versa for the things that you desire. Therefore, it is to consciousness you must turn, for it is the only foundation on which the phenomena of life can be explained. If we accept the idea of a first cause, it would follow that the evolution of that cause could never result in anything foreign to itself. That is, if the first cause substance is light, all its evolutions, fruits, and manifestations would remain light. The first cause substance being consciousness, all its evolutions, fruits, and phenomena must remain consciousness. All that can be observed will be a higher or lower form or variation of the same thing. In other words, it is your consciousness. If your consciousness is the only reality, it must also be the only substance. Consequently, what appears to you as circumstances, conditions, and even material objects is really only the product of your own consciousness. Nature, then, as a thing or a complex of things external to your mind, must be rejected. That's important. You and your environment cannot be regarded as existing separately. You and your world are one. Therefore, you must turn from the objective appearance of things to the subjective center of things, your consciousness, if you truly desire to know the cause of the phenomena of life and how to use this knowledge to realize your fondest dreams. Let's discuss. There was a lot there. What Neville's talking about here, consciousness being the first and only cause substance, basically, if we accept the idea of a first cause, it would follow that the evolution of that cause could never result in anything foreign of itself. So basically, if the first cause is consciousness, if the first thing to exist is God, then all things that bear fruit from that, all its evolutions, all its manifestations, have to be made of the same thing. So all things stemming from that first cause, consciousness, is also made of the same substance, consciousness. Basically, everything that you are experiencing is made up of consciousness. That's why it is not actually the case that you are separate from anything. And that's why we have to reject the idea that nature or your 3D reality is something or things external to your mind. It has to be rejected because you and your environment, you and the people that you know, you and the day-to-day things that you interact with has to be regarded as one. It's the first cause and substance of everything. That is God. So when we talk about ignoring the 3D, turning your attention away from the external sources and turning instead to within, to your consciousness, your imagination, this is why we're told to do that, because nothing is truly separate from you. It can't be. Let's keep going a little bit further. Let me see. In the midst of the apparent contradictions, antagonisms, and contrasts of life, there's only one principle at work, only your consciousness operating. Difference does not consist in variety of substance, but in variety of arrangement of the same cause substance, your consciousness. The world moves with motiveless necessity. By this it is meant that it has no motive of its own, but is under the necessity of manifesting your concept, the arrangement of your mind, and your mind is always arranged in the image of all you believe and consent to as true. The rich man, poor man, beggar man, or thief are not different minds, but different arrangements of the same mind, in the same sense that a piece of steel, when magnetized, differs not in substance from its demagnetized state, but in the arrangement and order of its molecules. And I love that analogy. It is a perfect analogy. A single electron revolving in a specified orbit constitutes the unit of magnetism. When a piece of steel or anything else is demagnetized, the revolving electrons have not stopped. Therefore, the magnetism has not gone out of existence. There is only a rearrangement of the particles, so that they produce no outside or perceivable effect. When particles are arranged at random, mixed up in all directions, the substance is said to be demagnetized. But when particles are marshaled in ranks, so that a number of them face in one direction, the substance is a magnet. Magnetism is not generated, it is displayed. So, in the same form, it's the same substance. If you take a piece of steel, when it's magnetized or demagnetized, it's still made of the same substance. It's still same molecules. They haven't disappeared. It's just a different rearrangement of them. And this goes for consciousness. Same thing is applied. It's the same substance, just rearranged. Health, wealth, beauty, and genius are not created. They are only manifested by the arrangement of your mind. That is, by your concept of yourself. And your concept of yourself is all that you accept and consent to as true. What you consent to can only be discovered by an uncritical observation of your reactions to life. Your reactions reveal where you live psychologically. And where you live psychologically determines how you live here in the outer visible world. The importance of this in your daily life should be immediately apparent. The basic nature of the primal cause is consciousness. Therefore, the ultimate substance of all things is consciousness. Incredibly important. Incredibly important. And what he says here at the end, why I talk so much about self-observation and really being aware of what you are doing, what you are thinking, how you are reacting to your day-to-day life. It's because your reactions reveal where you live psychologically, where you dwell, what state you dwell in or from. And that is going to determine what you experience externally. It's all down to your concept of yourself at the end of the day. Let's go to chapter 3, the power of assumption. We start getting into the good stuff. Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. All that befalls a man, all that is done by him, all that comes from him, happens as a result of his state of consciousness. A man's consciousness is all that he thinks and desires and loves, all that he believes is true and consents to. This is why a change in consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. Before, if you want to change to the outside, there has to be a change from within. And this is why. And the chief delusion that we have is that there are causes outside of us that create the circumstances that we experience. Everything that happens, everything that we experience, good, bad, anywhere in between, it's all as a result of the state of consciousness we occupy. Rain falls as a result of a change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere. So, in like manner, a change of circumstance happens as a result of a change in your state of consciousness. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, for you think from your ideas. We're going to pause in a second, really dive into that. But all transformation begins with an intense, burning desire to be transformed. The first step in the renewing of the mind is desire. You must want to be different and intend to be before you can begin to change yourself. Let's pause really quick, because where he says here, to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. The reason that I want to highlight this point is because when we talk about changing our thoughts, this has to come from a change in our beliefs. Neville says, your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, which is another word for beliefs. For you think from your ideas, you think from your beliefs. Your thoughts are automatic from the beliefs and assumptions that you hold. And once again, if you had different sets of beliefs and assumptions, you would automatically have different thought patterns. If I am dwelling in a state of feeling, that I'm not prioritized, that I'm not good enough, that I'm always overlooked in love and I'm never the one chosen, if those are my beliefs and assumptions, my thought patterns are going to be stemming from those beliefs. But if I change that to, I am chosen, I am prioritized, respected, and loved, your thought patterns are going to automatically change and reflect that. So we don't need to micromanage our thoughts. We don't need to try to change our thoughts. When you change your self-concept, your thoughts will automatically change. And all transformation begins with an intense burning desire. This is why we have desires. If we didn't have desires, we would never be moved to do anything. We would never be moved to change. We would never be spurred to evolve. So all transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed. And this is the first step in the renewing of the mind. That is desire. And you must want to be different before you can really begin to change yourself. Well, let's continue. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. By desiring to be other than what you are, you can create an ideal of the person you want to be and assume you are already that person. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. Again, we do this by going to the end. To make the future a present fact or a present belief, we go to the end. This is where imagining that wish fulfilled comes into play. You can create an ideal of the person you want to be and assume in imagination that you already are this person. And if this assumption is persisted in until it is a dominant feeling, it's inevitable. It has to materialize. The ideal you hope to achieve is already ready for an incarnation, but unless you yourself offer it human parentage, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, your attitude should be one in which, having desired to express a higher state, you alone accept the task of incarnating this new and greater value of yourself. In giving birth to your ideal, you must bear in mind that the methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. This is a point that is truly understood by probably not more than one person in a million. Not a whole lot of people have this understanding. And what he says here, the ideal that you hope to achieve is always ready for incarnation. That is because creation is finished. That is because that version of you already exists. So we're not even creating. We're not having to create anything. We're not having to make anything anew. You are just allowing yourself to entertain this state that already exists. And unless we do that, unless we allow ourselves to imagine and go to the end and feel that, it is incapable of birth. We have to offer this state human parentage, otherwise incapable of birth. Basically, we have to occupy the state or we're not going to see it. We're not going to experience it. It will remain as a hypothetical state of infinite states. You know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing it and defining it, by thinking of it, whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it, only by thinking from it. This is where the importance of thinking of and thinking from is stemming from. We can know a thing mentally by looking at it, by comparing it, measuring it, analyzing it, but that's thinking of. And for most of us, that is primarily what we are doing here, unknowingly. We can understand this law. We can read it back and forth and up and down. We can understand and know what our desired state would look like, but we can only know a thing spiritually by becoming it, and that is thinking from it. When you become this new person, you will automatically start to think from these new premises, not of them, not about them, as if it is separate from you. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it. You must be like the moth in search of his idol, the flame, who spurred with true desire, plunging at once into the sacred fire, folded his wings within, till he became one color and one substance with the flame. Just as the moth, in his desire to know the flame, was willing to destroy himself, so must you, in becoming a new person, be willing to die to your present self. We must die to the old self. We must die to that old man. That is the only way that we can become someone anew. You must be conscious of being healthy if you are to know what health is. You must be conscious of being secure if you are to know what security is. Therefore, to incarnate a new and greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are that which you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption, which is not yet incarnate in the body of your life, in confidence that this new value or state of consciousness will become incarnated through your absolute fidelity to the assumption that you are that which you desire to be. This is what wholeness means, what integrity means. They mean submission of the whole self to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in certainty that the new state of consciousness is the renewing of mind which transforms. Super important that we understand this. You cannot hold aspects of your old self. You cannot hold old beliefs, old fears and insecurities, and concepts that are in contrast with your desire, and also expect to become your desire, to be that person. This is the story of the crucifixion and resurrection of the Bible, is talking about dying to the old self and resurrecting as the new. And we do this through faith. We do this through going to the end and then walking with that faith, that even though I don't see it in my external world, even though there is no evidence of this external world, if I hold this feeling, if I hold this assumption that I am now this person, that is inevitably what has to become reflected. There is no order in nature corresponding to this willing submission of the self to the ideal beyond the self. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the incarnation of a new and greater concept of self to come about by natural evolutionary process. Basically, what he's saying here is it is foolish to think that we can become somebody anew just by the passage of time. Just by knowing about this is not enough. That which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect obviously cannot be effected without such a state of consciousness. And in your ability to assume the feeling of a greater life, to assume a new concept of yourself, you possess what the rest of nature does not possess: imagination, the instrument by which you create your world. Your imagination is the instrument, the means whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, and poverty is effective. If you refuse to assume the responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means, whereby your redemption, that is, the attainment of your ideal, can be effected. So basically, what Neville's saying here in so many words is the law does not operate itself. We have to be very active, proactive in occupying this new state. That which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect obviously cannot be effective without such a state of consciousness. So if we do not move into that state, if we don't occupy that state, we cannot expect to see a change. We cannot be the same person we have always been and expect a change. That's not how this works. And of course, imagination is the instrument that we bring about this change. People always ask, how do you change your self-concept? Your imagination. This is the instrument which we create our entire world. This is your creative power. This gives you the ability to assume a new concept, to occupy a new feeling, to entertain a new idea, and let yourself feel what that would be like. Because your imagination is not limited to your 3D circumstances. It's not limited to your conditions, whatever they may be right now. So if we want to see a change in our 3D, we cannot expect it any other way than through a change in our self-concept, a change in our state of consciousness, and that is done through your imagination. That is the instrument by which we create everything we experience. If you refuse, let me see. Yeah, if you refuse to assume the responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher self-concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means whereby your redemption can be effected. So if we for whatever reason do not assume that state of the wish fulfilled, if we do not assume the responsibility of that incarnation, that new state, then we reject the means where we can see it outpictured. Basically, the only way that we fail at this is a failure to accept and assume responsibility for that new state of consciousness. That's it. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. However, your nature is such that it is optional to you whether you remain in your present concept of yourself, a hungry being longing for freedom, health, and security, or choose to become the instrument of your own redemption, imagining yourself as that which you want to be, and thereby satisfying your hunger and redeeming yourself. So basically, he's saying there, you have the choice. You always have the choice. You always have that free will to decide what state you will dominantly occupy from. You can remain in your present self-concept, where things are familiar, things are normal, and it feels more natural to you. Or you can choose to become the instrument of your own redemption by imagining what you desire to be, who you desire to be, and what you desire to experience instead. The choice is always yours. But we cannot expect to see a change while also remaining the same. Same beliefs, same reactions, same self-concept equals more and more of the same. The choice is always ours. Right. Got time for maybe one more chapter. Desire. The changes which take place in your life as a result of your changed concept of yourself always appear to the unenlightened to be the result, not of a change of consciousness, but of chance, outer cause, or coincidence. However, the only fate governing your life is the fate determined by your own concepts, your own assumptions. For an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. The ideal you seek and hope to attain will not manifest itself, will not be realized by you until you have imagined that you already are that ideal. There is no escape for you except by a radical psychological transformation of yourself, except by your assumptions of the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Therefore, make results or accomplishments the crucial test of your ability to use your imagination. Everything depends on your attitude towards yourself. That which you will not affirm as true of yourself can never be realized by you, for that attitude alone is a necessary condition by which you realize your goal. All transformation is based upon suggestion, and this can work only where you lay yourself completely open to an influence. You must abandon yourself to your ideal, as a woman abandons herself to love, for complete abandonment of self to it is the very way to union with your ideal. This is all super important. To those who don't know any better, before we knew any better, the changes in our outside world seem to be the result of chance, outer cause, or coincidence. But we know in understanding the law that there is no such thing as coincidence. There is no such thing as chance or outside cause. The only fate governing your life is the fate determined by your concept of self. That's it. You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. That is, you must assume the feeling of the fulfillment of your desire until you are possessed by it. And this feeling crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness. The man who is not prepared for conscious plunge into the assumption of the wish fulfilled, in the faith that is the only way to the realization of his dream, is not yet ready to live consciously by the law of assumption, although there is no doubt that he does live by the law of assumption unconsciously. So this is where the pearl of great price comes in. This is where we have to take that leap. We have to go all in. We have to take the conscious plunge into the assumption of the wish fulfilled, in the faith that this is the way to manifest what you want. If we are not ready to do that, we are not ready to live consciously by the law of assumption, even though this law is what we are living by unconsciously. We're always operating from this premise. Whether you are conscious of it or not, you are always occupying a state. You are always manifesting your beliefs and assumptions. And that will continue to be the case whether we are aware of it or not. But for you who accept this principle and are ready to live consciously assuming that your wish is already fulfilled, the adventure of life begins. To reach a higher level of being, you must assume a higher concept of yourself. If you will not imagine yourself as other than what you are, then you remain as you are. For if you believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins. John 8:24. If you do not believe that you are he, the person you want to be, then you remain as you are. Through the faithful systematic cultivation of the feeling of the wish fulfilled, desire becomes the promise of its own fulfillment. The assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled makes the future dream a present fact. And we're going to stop there for part 1, first 4 chapters of The Power of Awareness. And I will make sure to post dates and times for the remaining parts, but the most important takeaways. You are this I am. The real you, the actual you, is consciousness, because consciousness is the only cause substance of life. That means it is the one and only cause of everything, and all things that you experience are the substance made up of consciousness. And if we want to change our circumstances, that comes through a change in assumption, a change in our self-concept. This may seem like we're going back to the basics, and we very much are, because it's easy to lose track of these premises. Very easy to lose track of these premises. So we want to take away that the most important thing for us is to understand that in order to change your 3D, there first has to be a change in self. There's no exception. There's no getting around that. And I know it may be frustrating to hear that, because changing oneself is not what the ego ultimately wants. We may notice a resistance to that change in self, but it is the only way. It is the only way. The changes will take place in your life as a result of your changed self-concept. So if you will not imagine yourself being other than what you are now, then you will remain the same. It's that simple. If we remain in this state, if we remain, attached to these concepts, whatever they may be, then we can expect to have the same experiences. To change that, first has to be a change in self. Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind. So that is going to be part 1. That was chapters 1 through 4 of The Power of Awareness. Again, it's only going to get better from here. I'm excited to dive into these following chapters. This really goes into all of the meat and potatoes of the law of assumption, everything that we need to understand. You can go ahead and feel free to also check out that book if you want to read it along in your own time. That is down in the description box below. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I had many, many requests to do a breakdown of The Power of Awareness. It is my personal favorite of Neville's books, and I do hope you guys join next time for part 2. I will make an announcement when that is. And in the meantime, everybody take care of yourself. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Much love to each of you. Until next time. Bye, guys.